All right, y'all. Going downstairs and record. All right, here we go. Here we go. Hey, y'all, I'm coming. Ouch. That hurt. Where's this other thing? Snap my finger up in this here. There we go. What's going on, y'all? We're gonna get this party started in 1 minute. I just need to set up this other camera here. I just pinched my damn finger. All right, so we're gonna get this up on here. Get this up on here. Yeah, good. There you go. Then we're gonna set this up on here. Come on, y'all. Let's go. Yeah, get rid of that. How you got there? Okay. Da-da-da-da. All right, here we go. Bam. Da-da-da-da. Ah. All right, let's get this party started. All right, here we go. Yeah, we look like we can drop that down just a tad more there. Think we on and popping on the other side. Let me just check and make sure. Yeah. Okay. Hey, y'all, what's going on? This is your man, Sexuality. What's happening? What's popping? Well, you know, I can always tell you what's dropping. Welcome to another episode of Daddy's Right Here Live. I am your host, as always, Sabir Alim. Just making some adjustments here on the old camera. Yeah. So we got this going on over here. Like that. All right. So last week we were talking about where's my mouse? Last week we were talking about responsibilities, duties, role assignments. We were kind of looking at messages that we're often given about our gender. You know, women are supposed to do, according to societal structure, women are supposed to do certain things and men are supposed to do certain things. And, you know, these become the expectations of many. And then culture factors in, excuse me, as well. Let me see where we were here last time. So, yeah, so the last thing we were talking about in last week's show was the media narratives of gender expectations. You know, they're just things that people have decided somewhere in this atmosphere of a man's world, they decided that these were traditional gender roles. We talked about how men are routinely depicted as assertive, career-driven, and physically dominant, while women are often framed as emotionally nurturing, domestic, and primarily valued for their physical appearance. And we talked about what each one of those things kind of look like in society, but remembering that these are media narratives. So if it's a media narrative, it's usually something that's established by the governing authorities of the television, magazine, entertainment networks. So we know what gender roles have been defined as being societally acceptable, but we also know that there's varied cultures that also shape and form identity, because this all comes down to the shaping of identity. Every bit of information that we absorb forms our identity. And it's funny, I was watching the ATL, and I never watched it before. It's the first time I'm actually watching the movie. And I'm looking at all these different things that shape identities. And I was reflecting back when I was younger and what I gravitated towards in terms of who was in the community. And I always gravitated towards the older brothers and women as well. I just, people my age just weren't an attraction for me because they didn't know a damn thing. They didn't know what I needed them to know for me to go where I was trying to go. I didn't see any of that in those my age. And then I start branching out and start encountering, some who were my age, who actually were couple guys were in my class. And then I start looking at the old heads, obviously, in the community. But the young boy in the film kept gravitating towards the girls, and was seeing how he was always getting flagged by the girls because he had none. He had no bling, no job, he had nothing going on. So within himself, right, he had already been conditioned by others. His identity had been shaped already. And then he began to see the other side that's outside of the parameters of the learning environment, which is in the household. He went outside of that. He had Uncle who was there, and Uncle was telling him to do this, trying to set the example. Then he had his older brother who was Tip. Tip was trying to tell him things and put him deep with things, showed him some money and showed him, you got to, hey, man, I'm cleaning floors and I'm making this. But that wasn't what he wanted. And for some reason, that was something that I gravitated toward. I had an uncle who was teaching me how to do things early on. I was 9, 10 years old, learning how to cut grass, use the lawnmower, repair the lawnmower. So if I could repair a lawnmower engine, I could repair a mini bike engine. So I started doing things and learning things to be able to put myself in alignment with being able to do other things. I didn't know how to ride a mini bike, but I was around my cousin and his friends, and they rode mini bikes. So I knew something about mini bikes. So I was able to kind of fit in and slide in there because I could do some quick fixing, when we were riding. But it was funny. I was looking at this guy, and he gravitated toward, the drug dealer, and wanted to do that work. He wanted to get that fast money. When he got the fast money, they showed how his whole character changed. And that's what we have to understand about life itself. when you make that turn to gravitate towards a particular person to have in your circle, to be in their circle, whatever it is, start paying attention to the change you make about yourself, whether it's preferences of clothing, cars, women, whatever it is, you start looking at how you're changing. This is how your circle masters you better than you do yourself. This kid went from, looking kind of dumpy and drab till he finally got some bling, popped some earrings in his ear, started dressing with some different gear. His whole swagger changed. In school, he started dealing with even those in his circle differently. Everybody became the problem because he had finally arrived to where he thought he wanted to be. And everything changed on him. When he got locked up, he got robbed, and then he owed the dealer money and this, that, and the other, and it turned out real well. But just to watch this young kid just change, as a result of being in a circle that he thought gave him power because he saw what the other person was getting. But what he didn't see was jail time, the stick-up boys, police interference, and things of that nature. He didn't see all those things. It's just like when you choose particular people to be in your life, be it a husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, they change you as well. They begin to try to encourage and motivate you to do other things and to try this and to try that. And you start seeing how you change, right? And a lot of people don't want to embrace that change. They want to resist that change because that's not who they want to be, because that's not how they were groomed and conditioned. Those weren't the messages that they received, and you're giving them a different message. But I remember doing the same thing as a kid. But I learned early on in terms of a gender role as a young male that work ethic was of the utmost importance. So my uncle didn't play that. Every Saturday we got up, we cleaned the whole house. Everybody had their duty station. So like, yo, you want to ride with me, right? You're going to have to get up earlier to get your chores done because I roll out early. So if you want to come out and make some money. So I learned early on, I'm going to have to get up a little earlier, go ahead and knock out my chores that I knew I had on Saturday so I can go ahead and swing with him. Grass cutting, exterminating. I remember those two things mostly because those are things that I did, I could do. I couldn't do certain repairs and things like that because I didn't have the knowledge, nor did I really have the attention span at that age. But I liked making money. I liked being on time. I liked, getting up early and getting dressed and rolling out. So that work ethic just went throughout all of my life. I just retired in 2024 after 30 years in human services. And that's how I was shaped. And that's part of the role, right? The gender role that I learned early on as far as the work ethic. And then there were other things that I learned that we talked about regarding sexuality. Talked a lot last week about sexuality. My having sex at the age of 13 with an adult woman who was 20, 21, 22 years old, and having that whole experience. It wasn't just a one and done. It was something that happened, but it was always on her terms. So 13, I'm being groomed, and not think in my mind that I'm being groomed, right? I was being groomed all along, and then I was being groomed even further to be involved with someone. I was just something to do. For me, it was love at 13 with an adult woman. But it shaped my identity. You understand? It shaped my identity. So it wasn't a one and done, but it was always when she was available, when we could get that moment. So I began to be conditioned to see other girls, women in that capacity. So a 13, then, the later teen, so on and so forth. So then coming into adulthood, I had already had the mindset that for a male, performance was of the utmost importance. And what I mean by performance was that sexually, you had to be able to perform. Love wasn't even in the equation. So I fell in love early on because it was my first as a 13-year-old with an adult woman. So I fell in love early, and I began to have the understanding at that point in time that this is what love looks like. Right? You got some money, you got a penis, you're in. That's the performance structure of a male. And I'm not the only male who is groomed that way. Not just, in having sex at that point in time in life, but understanding that you are to be a performer. Nurturing, caring, loving, all that, none of that matter. None of that matter. And it still doesn't matter today. As males, we have to make it matter. As males, we have to force the conversation. Like, yo, that ain't all I'm here for. That ain't all that we do as males. That's not all we do as fathers. Right? So the whole media thing, we know what it does. But one of the things that constantly is missed is the harmful behavioral expectations, right? Are unrealistic or toxic standards, such as like perfectionism and constant self-sacrifice. They trigger chronic stress, anxiety, a diminished sense of self-worth. I mean, how do you really feel yourself? I mean, really, how do you really feel about yourself if that's all your worth is? That you're just a penis and paper. That's all you are. That's all you're worth to the world around you, to everybody around you who encounters you. You have to be purposeful in the capacity of performing, right? So age doesn't matter. Age didn't matter when I'm involved with an adult. For me, I got all kinds of praises from the homies. Yeah, that's what's up, man. Yeah, attaboy and all that. And hyping me up to believe that is significant to living. So it was reinforced by the attaboys. It was reinforced by, that's what's up, man. Got the old head, right? Not thinking about anything else about personal growth and development and how that is being affected. I lost sight of everything else that was going on as a little boy because I was a boy. Let's get the understanding clear. I am a boy at 13 years old. I am still a little boy. I should not be engaged in sexual activity because it changes everything. It changes everything within the capacity of the natural order of growth and development for a 13-year-old. There are certain things that a 13-year-old should be focused on, and sex is not one of them. It is not one of them. For a girl or boy. For a girl or boy, it changes everything. How the old folk, look, I'm one of the old folk now, and I'm sitting talking to old folk. We used to always hear it coming up like you're smelling yourself. Your whole attitude changes. Your whole attitude changes. Yeah. You think because you didn't bust that nut that you didn't arrive to a place in life where now you are grown. So you can say little slick things out of your mouth to other adults, specifically your parents. You think you can clap back until you look up at the ceiling again because you didn't try. So the focus was like getting more. Like anything else that the human being takes in, right? The human being wants to feel good all of the time. Let's be clear on that. So Epstein Island may have made the news, but there are households. There are households where it's happening in plain sight to children. Yeah, it's always the person that's closest to you and or the child that has been given that kind of access. When the child enters into that stage of wanting to know what it's all about, Uncle Johnny is always there. Yeah. Come here. Come sit on Unc's lap. Come here. Let me talk to you. And they're giving these false hugs and acting like they love the child so much, but they're waiting for an opportunity. You have a daughter, don't never allow your little girl to sit on a man's lap. Right. Understand? Little girls should never sit on a man's lap. My daughter doesn't sit on my lap. And you say, well, that's your daughter. So now you don't put your daughter on your lap. Period. Your daughter should sit on the knee, shouldn't straddle your leg. It's part of her conditioning that you need to teach her how she sits on a man's lap, even if it's her boyfriend, her husband. It's all about look. It's all about image. It's all about maintaining, certain levels of modesty. Because that's my wife don't mean that she has to sit in my lap. What are you doing that for? You can sit on my leg. But a little girl should never, and little boys as well. We just like little boys. We just get handed to anybody, any woman that can babysit us. If she's available, she want that $20, for a couple of hours. She comes all over. She comes on over, all over too. In some cases, but she's the one again. Access. She doesn't have the same investment that you should have as a parent. Nah, it's something to do for the next couple of hours. I'm gonna be here. You ever had sex? Come here. You ever seen one of these? Here, come here. You ever see what? You don't think it happens? Oh, and don't think that Uncle Johnny ain't capable with your son. Let your son sit on his lap and whatnot, and playing with him and tickling him and wrestling with him, and next thing you know, he done flipped him over. And you don't think that happens. You don't think that happens. The whole grooming process. Yeah, you don't think that happens. We talked about conversations that you need to have with your child that are age specific regarding sexuality, regarding intimacy, understanding what intimacy looks like with males and what intimacy looks like with females and so on and so forth, and not pushing your own narrative through the child's throat because you want the child to have a particular understanding, like you woke people running around here, with all this phobia conversation, when you find that you're just as phobia about your own sexuality. You want to chastise people like they have to accept your way of life. And then you force that into your child's throat and say, well, I'm not, my child has a choice just like I do, but you're not giving the child a choice when you keep hammering on about your preference, right? And it's not their preference. And you want to keep hammering on with this knowledge of, well, this, when that is a choice that you made. But you don't even see where you have become some kind of advocate, for others to accept you as you are, but obviously you haven't accepted you as you are because you keep forcing it upon others. You just move on. I mean, it's like, do I wear boxers or do I wear briefs today? Right? It's a real simple thing. This is what I. But when you have dialogue that's always alluding to something other than the facts are you were born, this is what you have, this is what this does. Anything beyond that is you pushing your own narrative. Allow one to come into themselves without the influence. You understand? That's be heterosexual or other. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because that's not what we're talking about right now. When the question comes up about babies and all that stuff, because those are the typical questions, you answer them as is. This is how babies are made. End of story. End of story. To go into any other dialogue is you, right? You imposing your will and your own narrative upon the other. And that's what we have to stop doing with everything. When you have conversations about the father with the child, it has to be age specific. Why is daddy not here? So beyond the lies that you're going to tell about daddy's absence, because they're usually lies. Because if you're not telling your truth, because each person has their truth. There's no such thing up as there's your truth, there's his truth, and there's the truth. No, each person has their own truth. So you telling the child your truth about why daddy is not here, do you really need to do that? No. That is the point when you start having a conversation about how relationships often don't work out. You understand what I'm saying? So that's all these different conversations that we have. And instead of explaining the basic, the foundation of the subject matter, you want to start going into your narratives. And that's why children are shaped and formed into the adults that many of us encounter in relationships, in marriage. They haven't come into the understanding because you've given them your stuff. Your stuff. Right? My mother never married again after my father. She dated, but she never married again. She lived her life. After she had her children, she lived her life. She never got married again. Right? She has her reasons, but she never talked badly about marriage. You understand what I'm saying to you? So you need to stop having these conversations that are laden with your stuff and start giving children basic understanding of life, whatever they ask. So to start having conversations with the child saying, hey, your daddy this and your daddy that and your mama this and your mama that don't have anything. That's y'all. That's personal. Those are your choices. Those are your decisions to be this way, to act this way. Period. Doesn't have anything to do with the child. But when you start shaping the child with your disdain and despisal, about the other parent, you have shaped the child's thinking, not just about the other parent, but the gender itself. Because all I need is another person to come along and say something similar in nature, and now I'm beginning to form a whole opinion. But most importantly, I'm beginning to be shaped, identity-wise into this belief. And then how far do I go? Every man is not a bad man. Every man is not irresponsible. Every man is not hateful. Every man is not, this, that, and the other. And same vice versa for women. So to give that message, you're giving the child your own stuff, your own narrative. And that's wrong. That's wrong. So today, we're going to continue the conversation on gender expectations. And we're going to talk a little more about each one specifically in terms of, we talked about media. So the traditional expectations for women, historically and culturally expected to be nurturing, right? So historically, that has been the expectation, that a woman is to be nurturing, historically. And when you go back, I don't have the PowerPoint stuff like that, but when you go back to the whole parenting thing and custody rights and things of that nature, Parliament established that what's called the tender years is a child, I believe it was, I'm 99% sure, under the age of 7. Parliament had established that the child should be with the mother when it came down to parental rights and custody, because they considered from 7 and below to be the tender years of a child's upbringing. So, and that was established based on this whole historic expectation and understanding that women are nurturing. They're expected to be nurturing. So when you have a woman who is not nurturing and you make that decision, what does that look like? Well, the flip side is, if men aren't seen as being nurturing, right, that this decision is going to stay the same, because historically and culturally, males are not expected to be nurturing. Males are not expected to be nurturing culturally and historically. The performers, going back to where we started. That's what the male role is, but we're talking about the women right now. So historically, where did they get that information from? How did they come to the conclusion that a woman is expected to be nurturing? Where would you get such an idea from? Men? And how would a man see a woman as being nurturing? Now remember, we're talking about historically and we're talking about culturally expectations. Understand? So somewhere in there, it was established by Parliament way back in I forget the date, I don't want to say 1863. I think it was, but I'll get you that information. But Parliament established back in 1800s that the mother should have the child up until the age of 7. And then at the age of 7, it would be okay if the father then took the responsibility, the custody of the child. But they call them the tender years for a reason. And if you know anything about children, you kind of see where breastfeeding, the detachment, the attachment, the 9-month attachment, and then the birth. And when you look at the the different changes that happen with the child's personal growth and development, during those years, they're very tender years. So a lot happens in those years. We have the ones that you have when they come into being toddlers, and so they do things up until the first year, mostly just sleep and cry and poop and all that kind of stuff. And then at one, they're starting to have the first experience of running all over the house. And then two, they run faster and they get into more things. And I thought that was actually just like the point where once they get past two and they come into three, they're a little more settled. But actually, it's not true. It's when they start heading into 3 and 4 where all of that they grasp up until that point is now more prevalent in what they're saying out of their mouths. My 4-year-old shocks us with conversations because of the influence of the media, ongoing conversations in the household with her mother and I and her siblings. Everybody talks to her. I teach her to be able to explain things. If she's asked something, yes and no is not sufficient enough in many cases. So why are you upset? Oh, I don't know. Well, you have to know you're upset. You're going through feelings about it. You don't want to play. You're feeling all these things and that you were just involved in a few minutes ago. Then this happens, and so what happened? Teaching her to have an answer for things, teaching her how to respond to stressful situations. She always talks about fireworks, she enjoys seeing them, but as soon as it's time to get things on and popping, it's a whole different thing. She hates the noise, she cries all the time, and I'm not going to keep comforting that. So I teach her, it's not hurting you. There's nothing to be afraid of. You're standing right here. Look outside. What do you see? Outside, what do you see? Mommy lights the thing. Poof, yes, it's loud, but you love the beauty of the firework itself. You just don't like the boom and all of that. We're teaching her. We had a storm. I think last week, the week before last week, during last week's show, started raining. You heard the loud clapping of the thunder, and it scared the life out of her. I'm telling her, come on downstairs, and she's not. She wants me to come up there. No, when we're in an emergency situation, had that been an emergency situation, right? If I tell you come on down, I need you to come down. I can't go into the hazard without creating another. So like if I call you and tell you to come downstairs, I need you to come downstairs. Right? So teaching her those kind of things. Very strong-willed, having to tame it and structure it where it's okay to say this in this situation because she's real slick with the mouth. She's real smart. Right? You start seeing what happens. So that was something that I missed in my other children, right? Because I have, older children who remind me of how old I really am. But again, historically and culturally, you have to look at all these things, the messages that they hear, like nurturing. What does nurturing look like? So let's talk about defining the word, because remember, we're talking about women right now, and I want you to focus on what it is that I'm saying about expectations of a woman, right, and where they originate. So we know that there's scripturally, there's outlines and guidelines for what a woman is expected to do, right? you have to do this, you have to do that, you dress in this manner, you just everything that's opposite of what you see in the media when we talked about that description of gender expectations. The media doesn't send that same message. So if you are a believer, right, and you have the books to guide you into, because that's it's a whole deeper discussion. But when you see, it's like a clapback, right? You get all of this information from your good books, and then you go back into man's world, and you start seeing how man's world provides familiarity and comfort because you were groomed in this particular capacity. And you're always at odds with what should be seen as your truth in terms of guidance and existence as a human being. But you have been reduced from being a human being to being black, a black woman, a black man, a white woman, a white man, an Asian, so on and so forth. That's how you have been reduced already. So when we start looking at historics, what periods are we actually looking at? Right. So I think it was 1863 is when Parliament made this decision. But prior to that, how were women seen to be nurturing? Right? Is it nurturing because you have a woman standing over you, fanning you? Right? As like a servant, feeding you grapes while you sit back in the pool. That's a great and wonderful experience to have that's happening. But is that nurturing? Or is that subservient? So you have to begin to look at, again, the expectation historically and culturally, right? Because if you're reading scripture and you're seeing the position of women within a society, women are really told to sit in silence. How nurturing can you be when you're muted from the rest of society? So that means over time that changes. Well, let's go to the definition. Nurturing means to care for, to protect. And that sounds like a cop, doesn't it? Right? To protect and serve. Yeah. So nurturing means to care for, protect, and actively encourage the growth and development of someone or something. Now let's stop there for a minute. To care for, protect. Now, early on, historically, we're talking about what was there to do in this life. Now, think back as far as you can think and look at what society looked like, as far back as you can think. Because if you go back to after the garden, is that really historic? If you go back before the garden, right? So that's what you have to look at, how far back you want to go. And don't skip steps. If you go all the way back to before, right? You can't come all the way up too fast, because at the garden, in the garden, there was a different place. Then the event, the documented event, now get ye all down from here. Now you're in another place. So then you come to this place. So there was a place that preceded all of that. Right? There was a place that preceded all of that. Where did we see nurturing? Was that part of the idea? Adam was in a place by himself, one like him. He was in the place, just him. What was observed? What was observed? Ask yourself that question. What was observed? That God saw the need of Adam, because it wasn't God's need, it was man's need. He saw something happening with Adam. Loneliness, I can't think what he would be thinking, what he saw and how he interpreted what was seen in order for him to say, you need a partner. There's something about the twine that is significant. But Adam needed a partner. Dude, was he talking to himself? Was he just like losing his mind? Was he chasing the sheep? What was he doing? What was happening with Adam? Right? Because again, we're talking about historics and culture in regards to expectations of a woman to be nurturing. When you look at the term partner, what does partner mean? Because it doesn't say wife. Partner. And this is what we have to understand. We have to take everything that we know and everything we think we know and look at something that we don't know. Because many people don't know about their humanity. You know that you're a woman, you know that you're a man, but you don't know your humanity. You know what media tells you, you know what those in your household tell you, who have the responsibility of molding, shaping, and guiding you towards wherever it is that they want you to go. Not where you want to go, but where they want you to go. So we know that. So where is nurturing? So at that point, we could assume that was the role for Adam, right? That was the woman's position with Adam. Understand? Procreation is the focus, right? Because in order for this man's world to become, there have to be more. So again, look at the word partner. What does partner mean? What does partner mean? Look at the definition of the word partner. When you think of a partnership, right? You think of attorneys, so you have biddle, boom, and bam, right? It's a legal practice. One's a criminal attorney, one's a slip and fall attorney, one's a corporate attorney, right? But they have biddle, boom, and bam. Yeah, you contact them, we take care. What? We got somebody here for that too. Then you have you have all these different persons, but you have a partnership, biddle, boom, and bam. They're partners in this legal business. They prosper, right? They have more assets because they have the three of them. It's not just one. So each one of them brings something else to the table. Is that nurturing? What does nurturing mean? So now you have the partnership, but where's the nurturing coming? Because what we're trying to decide at this point in time, historically and culturally, this is an expectation of women that they are nurturing. in the reading of your own scripture, do you see the definition of the expectations in regards to nurturing and what nurturing looks like? Or is it stated that they should do this, 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 and this, and this? Because now when you look at nurturing, then you have to look at the synonyms. Because you might say it's this, and if you look at the synonyms, well, it's the same thing. But what does it mean to nurture? And again, as it's saying here, is it means to care for. So a partner that provides care. What does it mean to care for? All right, well, Adam didn't know how to cook food the right way, right? So he was taught how to. That is that caring for. He'd catch animals and he wouldn't cook them all the way. He wouldn't clean them all the way. Is that nurturing? Is that part of caring for? Protect. How does she protect me? How does my Eve protect me as a man? How? What does she protect? Denying access to her protects me. Does that protect me when she denies access by others to her? Is she protecting me? Could be. Is she protecting me by allowing me access to her as needed? Because remember, the creation is for what? Right? Well, in paradise, life was different. Here, the need to multiply. For what? You understand? So I need to be cared for. I need to be protected. And we have to form an understanding within ourselves. If this is a traditional expectation of a woman, how does she protect me? Is the understanding that I must come to. I'm not going to tell you how your woman will protect you, but we're trying to look at how it's been determined that a woman is expected to be nurturing. Accommodating. What does that mean? Does that falls that because they all fall together, right? Because that's the word we talked about, accommodating, emotionally expressive. But we know that there's certain women are certainly emotionally expressive. But what does that look like? Emotionally expressive. Now we're talking about historics and culture of the expectation. So that means that when you have difficulty with a woman who is vocal, right? Because we know when we look back on historics and we look at a lot of things that transpired in communities, a lot of wars and things were interrupted, ended, interfered with. When we look at different rights and things like that, mostly we saw women out there because they are emotionally expressive. You think you walk up the street and there's a fight. Who do you usually see stepping in to stop it? Well, historically, who do you typically see? Come on, y'all need to stop. Just go. Let's stop it. Don't look good for the kids. You're scaring the children. It sounds like protect. It sounds like protect. Right? So to and actively encourage the growth and development of someone or something. So what we men tend to see as being treated like a child is an expectation that may be in need of refinement when talking to an adult. So if they're already emotionally expressive as women, if they're caring and they're seeking to protect us as men, and they're encouraging growth and development, sometimes growth and development coming from an emotionally expressive person to a child and coming to an adult almost sounds the same depending on the adult and where they are, what capacity they have within themselves to be able to handle an emotionally expressive, encouraging. You understand? I'm trying to help. There it is. I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to talk to you like you're a child. And I'm sorry if it's sounding like that. That is not my intent. So the best thing that she can do, if she cares, because somebody caring for me doesn't mean that they care. And we get caught up in that all too often, that you're looking for somebody to care. Nobody has to care. But when we talk about care for, we're talking about, your partner now, because because we're talking about women. We're not just talking about wives and girlfriends specifically, but we're talking about a woman. So we want to bear that in mind too, because this is a woman. This is her humanity in front of you. If that's her condition, we have to then remember everything that comes along with her natural condition and the natural order that has caused her to deviate from, been caused. See, it's been taken away. We take away the natural order of development when we start interjecting our stuff. If that makes sense. So she's talking to you as a man, but she's talking to you in a way that you find to be offensive, because I'm not your child. That came from somewhere. That came from somewhere. So if you are a male who has lived in a female dominated environment, right? Whether you're just raised by mom, or whether you're raised with mom and dad and female siblings, all of these things begin to shape, your identity. The responses when you and your sibling, your female sibling, are in conflict, the responses by the caretakers in the environment are shaping your identity as to how you interact with them. Stop hitting your sister, she's a girl. My mother used to always tell my sister, stop scratching him in his face. He's going to have marks on his face. So these messages resonate. Understand? So let's finish the definition of nurturing. It involves providing essential physical or emotional support, such as nourishment, guidance, or encouragement, to help things like children, relationships, skills, or plants thrive. We're talking about nurturing. We're talking about nurturing. So when we as males begin to respond to these expectations that have been, which are innate, meaning that they were born with it, and then they're altered by the comments, the statements, the guidance provided by the caretaker, it gets distorted. Our perception as males gets distorted. So then we begin to see the core of the difficulty in the relationship, because this is something that's innate. If I'm a caretaker and I was never taught to engage a man in a way that is respectful, but also reflects care, also reflects protection. And if the male doesn't understand that, then herein lies another part of the problem. Our difficulties between us as male and female come from a long list, man. And each person has shaped your identity based on the experiences that they have, mostly coming from what's said, reinforced by what's seen. And we have to understand this on both sides. We have to understand this, because when we begin relationships with one another, all of this plays out. If we don't have conversation to say, hey, you know what? But I was raised by my mother. She was always yelling and screaming at me, beat my behind. And now here I have you as my woman standing in front of me, yelling and screaming at me. You beating my behind is not a concern in most cases, because then we start going into domestic violence and how that's handled as well. But I have an issue with that. I have an issue with the woman raising her voice at me. And when you do that, I feel that all over again. And it's easy for somebody to say, yeah, but you're an adult now. You're not a child anymore. Yeah, but it's embedded within me to not like that. So let's address that first. Stop telling the other person, well, you need to, be a man. You're a man now. I ain't your mother. But listen to how you're talking to me. I just told you I got a problem with that. Yes, I may need to do some work on that if I want to have consistent long-term relationships. But you too, as the partner, need to understand how that behavior affects me, because it ain't going to last long if you move past what I just told you about what triggers me. You understand? Because I'm not going to just keep sucking it up while you keep doing it. So you need to understand expectations of me as a man and my interpretation of life. See, that's how that works. So you may be nurturing, you may be loving, caring, and all these things like that. You may be all of that. But your stuff has filtered it out in a different manner. And you need to also take a look at that. But if you don't understand anything about your humanity, you're not even going to make it that far. Right? What time is it? Okay. So providing essential physical or emotional support. Now, we have to understand what physical support looks like. Because then it goes back to the importance and significance of sex to you. It goes back to understanding the significance of intimacy. Because if you're with a person long enough, that you can have great, wonderful sex day in and day out and day in and day out for years. And then at some point in time, it changes because it's no longer the most significant part. of the relationship. Sitting down, holding hands and watching a television show, a movie, the news, laying with each other, spooning, putting your head on their shoulder. Like, you got to look at all of these things as being essential. And many relationships fail because they have not been intimate with one another. They're just having sex. They're just living together. They're just performing. Dude's doing his performance. He's giving up the work. He's giving up pay. That's it. That's all I need you for. I don't need you for nothing else. I don't know. I got my girls. I got the homies. With the homies, I don't talk about nothing. But with the girls, it's like females are different. They talk about those things. They don't talk to you, and then they don't see where it's the problem that they don't talk to you. But they want you to talk to them. But they don't talk to you. See, and people lose sight of the roles. And again, if you are in a relationship, these are expectations. People keep talking about this unconditional love. And nobody has so far adequately explained how is there no conditions on how I love you. There are. There are. You respect me first and foremost. That's a condition. Because why do you terminate relationships? If you unconditionally love this person, why do you cut them off? Little girl, I'm recording. There's no need for you to be in the hallway or for you to be coming down the stairs. No, you cannot. I am recording, Sabria. Do not come down the stairs. Go back to your room. Thank you. I'll be done shortly. I'll let you know. Okay? All right. So when you start looking at all of these things, where did you get your information from about how she should act? Who taught you that? When did you know you? When did you become you? At what point in time did you know who you were? At what point in time did you say, this is who I am? And how do you know at that point in time you were you? Are you you now? Or are you your father? Or are you your mother? Or are you your uncle, your aunt? Who are you? But you could tell somebody else, you can tell your partner who they are or who they are not. Based on what? Where did your expectations come from? Of how she should be as your wife, as your partner, as your girlfriend, whatever. At what point in time? So you sit in front of this woman, you tell her who she's supposed to be. You're sitting in front of her saying, well, historically and culturally, these are expectations. Are they culturally? Are they historically? And how did you conclude that? I didn't say you don't know. I'm just asking, how did you conclude that? You're asking somebody to live according to the expectations that you have internalized. Emotional support. And again, what we have to look at is, I'm focusing on the traditional expectations of women, but the definition of nurturing applies to men and women, right? Because we're looking at historically, the woman is seen as being nurturing, accommodating, emotionally expressive, right? Men are typically pressured to be stoic. That means without expression, without responding to anything in the terms of like no emotion, just dominant, physically strong, and focused on providing financially, while frequently discouraged from showing vulnerability, impact on well-being, right? A performer. A performer. You give up the penis, you give up the paper. That's it. But all human beings are given this. All human beings can be nurturing. But again, we're talking about, we went from a media the definition of expectations of gender to historics and culture. So if typically, and it says typically pressured to be stoic, dominant, physically strong, and focused on providing financially, while frequently discouraged from showing vulnerability, impact on well-being. So you always got to look strong. What does strong look like? Scowl in your face, a dip, the cuff in your arm, aka hook, right? The swagger, the appearance that you were hurt of. What? So when we look at males today, right, because we got to go back to culturally, right? The environment has changed. I don't know what the environment was like man's first coming. There's a whole lot of stories I've heard. I don't know. I can only begin where life began for me with that interpretation of who my mother dated, who I was in the classroom with, who I rolled with, and you know, when I was coming up. Understand? I knew there was knowledge in old heads, knowledge that I didn't have. That's why I always hung with older dudes. Most conversations with those my age were irritating as hell. Like, you know, we after we get past, you know, we group up and, you know, when we talk about some stuff, we laugh and joke. I was only with a handful of people. I think 5 of us kind of met on a regular basis. You know, it was Mike Brooks, Vernon Jones, Cloud. I forget Cloud's name. The 3 of us were the main ones. I mean, the 4 of us. I'm counting them 3. But every morning I saw Mike. Well, not every morning. Mike was always on the roll. Sometimes Mike, you know, but on most days, Monday through Friday, Mike showed up. Because we used to get together early in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock, come out, wipe and sleep out of eyes, just to group up. And then everybody went on about their day. So for me, it's always been just a handful of people. All my life, it's just always been a handful of people. And these people, like Mike Mike was a gambler. He was about them bones. But he got himself a restaurant. They started referring to him as Deli Mike. I never knew who the hell Deli Mike was when I was hearing, you got to go holler at Deli Mike's. And when I moved up the area, I started going to Deli's Mike. And one day I'm standing to go in there. My first time in there, somebody from the back calls me by my birth name, and I'm like, shit, I ain't heard that. You know, yo, what's on? What's up? Who that? Mike, what's up, man? Like, oh, what's up? You working? He's like, nah, this is me. Vernon went to the military. He became some detective, military detective. Uh, Cloud been with the Nation of Islam all of his life, so he was part of the nation back then in 70 or 74, 75, somewhere around in there. Because like Vernon and Mike were in the same class. But it was always that particular group of people, that I was around, who I was learning from. Then my Uncle Frank, then Mr. Carl, then my Uncle John, my grandfather. So I was always gaining knowledge. That's what I wanted. I wanted knowledge. So the whole being dominant and all that, I wasn't focused on any of those kind of things. A lot of people who were in my circle, my media circle, and then those on the outer circle, because I hung with some dudes who were heavy in the waistband, and rocking the Timbs and running with the Grim. So I hung with them, some of them dudes too, off and on. It wasn't a regular basis, but I had a couple dudes who I connected with. But people always seemed to look out for me, like yo, ain't gonna be none of that. Love with that. People, seem to make sure that the verbiage that they gave to others was yo. So I always felt protected. So I didn't have, I had the typical skirmishes, and I had this one boy I fought all the time. The whole light skin, dark skin thing. I never understood it. Like, dude, what does my being light skin have to do with you being dark skin? Went through that, fought this boy all the time, but didn't have a whole lot of fights. A couple of fights in school, and it's usually with the same people. Like yo, and we cool with each other, but we always seem to, because I don't know, we're just having a bad day. So, so I didn't have that then, and I don't have it now. I haven't had a physical confrontation since 1977. Listen, I just don't like, yo, I ain't with all that. Let's go ahead with that. You're right, bro. My bad. I ain't see you there. No problem. Not a problem. But I don't cower to anyone. If I tell you it's my bad, I'm good. Yo, we cool. No problem. Leave it there. Because I'm gonna keep on going after that. I'm not gonna stand there. I don't do the back and forth and all that. So when I see these dudes who find it necessary to respond to things, I saw a whole post the other day. Somebody posted talking about respect, and this dude just went all out. Beat the girls behind, beat the dudes behind, and everybody's talking about respect, and respect this and respect that, but you don't respect yourself. You don't respect others. You want people to respect you, but you don't want to show respect. But then when you feel disrespected, and I say feel disrespected because you didn't think it all the way through, you feel like somebody disrespecting you, then you think you have the right to go all out. It don't matter. It don't matter, and it does matter, because there's an end result. And when you have a family, when you have responsibilities, when you have your life to live, somebody didn't get this life, and you just take and just toss away this life because he disrespected me. What is disrespect? Disrespect is only an interpretation of an expectation that you think that you can put upon others. That's all it is. So you have to teach people what respect looks like to you. And people will quickly say, well, no, I didn't disrespect you. How do you know you didn't disrespect me? By your interpretation. But by my interpretation, I felt disrespected. Right? So that means that you need to change how you approach and talk to me. Plain and simple. I show you respect. If I say do something that disrespects you, you tell me. I'll correct it. because it's not about my interpretation, but how you talk to me. I can interpret any way I want to. Doesn't mean that I have to go putting a knife in somebody's chest because they push me. I'm going to push you back. So nurturing is for the male and the female. Encourage the growth and development of someone. Now, when you start this, here's the thing. When you look at what they have here as being typically pressure to be, when you look at that list and you look at nurturing, first of all, nurturing is not even noted anywhere for men. This is where one of the biggest problems is, because men have so much misinformation told to them, right? And guiding them and shaping their identity, and also the media projects. You got a whole lot of things here that males have to really contend with. A lot of misconceptions and myths about males. And this just happens to be one. This says typically pressured. You know why it says typically? Because nobody has ever determined that men are nurturing, that men are loving, caring, and actively encourage growth and development of someone or something. Men don't have that definition attached to them in so many cases, which is why when I started developing this session content, I started looking at, typically, because it's not in stone. But the one gender that has always had nurturing and caring attached has been the female, the woman. Always. So when a man becomes expressive, now you have to remember chromosomes. Women are XX chromosomes, right? Men are XY. So we know that the Y chromosome is the male, and we know that the X chromosome is the female, right? And the reason for that makes all the sense in the world. When you look at a partner, many talk about male and female in regards to Adam and Eve, but they talk about Eve's creation, with Eve being made from a part of, right? A part of Adam. A part. They were made apart. She was given a part. Therefore, termed as a partner. I want you to kind of think for a minute. A part, a partner, right? When you start thinking about the usefulness that this partner should have, because now we're acting as partners, but the partner has to also understand that I know you. I know you. Yeah. Because you have a part of me in you. The male determines the sex of the child. Isn't that amazing? It's so minimized. I make all girls. But the other part to all of this, pun intended, is that the male has the female chromosome in him. Why then would he not be considered the same in terms of expectations as being nurturing? Right? Fathers can care for and protect their children. Fathers actively encourage the growth and development of something or someone. Fathers provide essential physical or emotional support to help things like children, relationships, skills, or plants thrive. Why isn't that attached to men? It's part of our creation, but it's not recognized. It always seems to be one of those conversations. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, fathers can be. We know that. But society hasn't embraced that concept, that they just want to have us looked at as buffoons, as instruments of pleasure. Right? So when you look at dominant, the term dominant generally means having power, influence, or control over things, or being the most prominent, common, or important element in a particular context. I'm just saying. So for any male watching this, I hope this kind of sheds some light on being able to understand why society sees us in this capacity and why there's so much resistance in the family services portrayal of us. That's the courts. That's Department of Children, Families, Department of Family Services, whatever they are. This is why we're treated the way we are. Because of a typical expectation of us. And then you layer on culture. So what happens in the Black community, how different is it in white communities, in Asian communities, in Christian communities, Muslim, Jewish, Catholic communities, because now we got to start layering all that on. So see, all of these entities outside of us take everything away from us and gives us a typical description. And when we interact with women, women respond to us based off of a typical, imposed, forced interpretation of who we are as men. So when I hear brothers talking about, yo, man, you crying from the woman, it changes everything about her. There's a reason for that. If a woman is typically expected to be nurturing and caring, and a man is just this dominant image that has a penis and money, and that's as far as that scene, you crying, you shedding, being expressive, and you being emotionally expressive, right? And you're termed as being some kind of bitch to males and females. Because what has been pressured upon us to be. Nobody wants to see us as being nurturing. And for somebody to say that, right, it shows how lack of knowledge you have of yourself. You have a male and female chromosome. What the hell do you think that means? Again, we're so far away from our humanity. We're stuck. You fight every day getting up and getting out there in the world because you see yourself as just a black man when you're a human being. But society gave us those titles. Society placed that upon us. So now that's what you live by. But the Creator gave you so much more, but you only live by what man imposes upon you. It's a lot to learn, man. What you learn, you can relearn. You can't unlearn it because you know it. But you can reshape those teachings. You can reshape that belief. You can reshape that thinking. and transform into you. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot easier said than done. It takes a lot of work, but it also takes a circle change. You can't be with the same folks who are going to keep giving you the same information. They're going to keep giving you the same information. You're not going to get any different information from them because, like yourself, right? You're in the same condition. You don't change your condition. You don't see a need to change your condition. For what? We tend to live by everything everybody tells us that we are who we are, no matter who it is. They told you who you are. You have settled with this is who I am, and you don't want to see any other growth and development. I got a job, I got an income, I got this, I got that. I don't have this. I'm all right with all of that, but I'm going to stay just the way I am. I'm not going to seek to grow. I'm not going to seek to be open-minded. I'm not going to seek to, not be selfish. I'm not. I'm just not. I'm not going for what? You want me? You adapt. You accept who I am. You accept me for the way I am. No. You got it wrong. You can't be shitty to me, disrespectful to me, and think that I'm supposed to keep taking it. Absolutely not. Wrong answer. I don't care how much I love you. I will walk away from you. If you think that you're going to take my peace, there. If you think I am that whooped by anything, you are sadly mistaken. We ain't going to keep having the same conversation about respect. If I haven't earned your respect by how I've been treating you, about what I do for you, you need to go. I go in earning. I go in doing work. I show what I'm working with. I show right from the gate. I don't play. I don't have time for playing. I go right in. If you haven't respected me within a certain amount of time, you don't intend to. And that's an easy fix because and within a short period of time, you can figure it out. It don't take years to figure that out. It don't take years to figure that out. Maybe a couple of months, few months, maybe a year, because at some point in time, the honeymoon period may begin to, disintegrate, and you start seeing a real person for who they are. You usually see it when you say no. You see it real quick. No. No. No, it's not a discussion. No. If I say no to you about a thing, there's a reason why I'm saying no to you. And you have to trust that I'm telling you no for a reason, a good reason. I'll explain it. Ain't no problem telling you that. But if I'm telling you no, it's a damn good reason why I'm telling you no. And if you respect me enough, you'll accept the no. Because you know that I love you, I adore you. Anything I can get and give you, I will do it. If I'm telling you no about a thing, it's a damn good reason why. That's part of respect. But you'll know. So ain't no sense. Listen, I did this one for you. This is my 5th marriage, right? I truly believe, it to be my final one. Either or. Not because I just don't want to do marriage again, just because, hey, I'm too old for that shit. 65 years old. What I look like getting married again? Huh? What would I look like getting married again? For what? I don't care. I don't care how much money she had. I've already did the money thing. I've chased the bag. I got the bag. And I like life. Really, I like life without the bag. I like peace and quiet. With the bag, man, it's a whole lot more that comes along with that. And I'm not going to deny it. I'm simply telling you there's so much more. I'm going to stay the way I am. I don't see the need to be Now my wife may want some things, and obviously I'm going to enjoy the things, but I'm saying I don't feel the need to. I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm good. I really am. I'm good, man. I have lived such a wonderful life, man, beyond expectations, beyond. I've had a great, wonderful, and I'm still living. I'm doing this. I'm getting ready to look for a home for daddies right here in Riviera Beach, Florida. Hopefully, it's in Riviera Beach or in West Palm Beach, but I like for it to be in Riviera Beach. Riviera Beach is a very close knit environment. It's just one of those places where you say I'm home. I don't know about anybody else. I've always for the 10 years that I've lived, 11 years I've lived in Riviera Beach from Philly. I love the pace in Florida, this part of Florida. I love the environment. I ain't never had no conflict here. Brothers, the brothers here, in Riviera Beach have never been disrespectful. I've been in different places. It's just not that way, here, and I love it. So I like to build a home here for daddies right here, and just stay tuned because I'm going to establish not a funding plan to be able to get a facility up and running. I know a lot of good clinicians here in Florida who I have worked with for years, met a lot of people, so it's coming. But yeah, I've had a wonderful life, man. Oh, and these shirts, that people ask about this daddy's right here shirt. This shirt is no longer available. This shirt was made back in 2000, and I think when did I do my first symposium? 2007, 2008. Yeah, somewhere 2007, 2008. This shirt came out. I have new shirts. This is one of the old-fashioned ink print shirt that was done by Great Graphics in Philly. If you looking to get some good quality shirts, good ink. This now remember, this looks like it just got printed. But Great Graphics in Philly. I think they're over there off of Front and I want to say Front and Lehigh, somewhere up there, off right on the tracks where the tracks are. If you're from Philly, But great prices, quick turnaround. And this was made. So now I designed my own shirts. I designed this logo too, and this is a copyrighted logo. So don't go running and trying to slap it on something. I got it on me as well. So you can see that it's on my arm. There's the logo there. But I have hats and shirts. I don't know if you've seen them yet, but there are hats, shirts, pullover, zip-up hoodies that you can find on my Aleem for You website. And I'm still working on restructuring the website, but you'll be able to go on there and get your merchandise. And the merchandise purchased from aleemforyou.net. The merchandise part proceeds will go to Daddy's right here, aiding us in creating a discretionary funding stream. So any repairs, building repairs, and anything like that, we need to do, we're able to go to those funds and not have to structure it into a grant. And we don't want misappropriation of funds, so we are not going to be having anything outside that. But this is what Aleem for You actually does. It actually, the sales will create a funding stream, allowing us to do building repairs, to take, have events and food, cater, different graduations and things of that nature that we want to begin to have. But yeah, so that'll be starting up. The fundraising efforts will begin within the next 1 to 2 weeks. This is what I do, man. I've been human service professional, worked in the field for 30 years. We're going on now, 30? That was in 24. We're 26, almost 27. So you're looking at 33 years. Serious and persistent mental illness, substance abuse, use, misuse, behavior shaping, skilled professional cognitive behavior expert, psychotherapy. So when you're watching these these shows, you're actually watching a therapy session. You're actually watching a counseling session. It's just I'm not going to tell you what your problem is. I'm going to tell you to take a look at some things, man. You have to figure it out on your own. But if you're not looking at the things that I'm telling you, then what's the point? Everybody is not seeking change, and you need to understand that. You need to understand that when you're at odds with the child's mother, the child's father, when you're at odds with them, it begins with you. The change begins with you. You're doing this for the child. It's not about you. It's about the child. It's what it's about. So making changes to yourself is important. You understanding yourself is important. You understanding other persons, like the possibilities of what's happening between the two of you. Hurt people. Why that person is hurt is not your business of discussion with them, but enables you to kind of get a different lens on why this person is reacting this way. What did you do to hurt this person? Because if the relationship wasn't like this before, why is it this way now? And sometimes you don't do anything. Sometimes the mere fact that they got pregnant is enough to be angry. Guilt, shame, those things become prevalent. I ain't saying it's right. I'm not saying it justifies you taking my child away from me, you not letting my child see me. I understand that you this, that, and the other, but this is my right. You have to take some of the sting off of this too. Yeah. You have to take some of the sting off of this too. And it enables everyone to be able to interact with one another in a whole different capacity. You still mad because she did this. I get it. I understand. I do. And no, I'm not giving them a pass on what they did. I have to pass on retaining it within myself so I can move forward and show the child not to repeat the same thing. Because everything you do, the child watches. Everything you say, the child hears, and it shapes their identity. You have to remember that part. Whether they are adult children, whether they're teenagers, whether they're babies, you have to approach this differently, especially if you're looking to have your rights upheld. Because all too often, I've seen fathers just blow up, become violent, because that's the expectation. You're not leaning towards your nurturing part, your caring, your supportive part, right? You have to learn how to Listen, stop trying to improve some other dude. Stop trying to validate. Stop trying to validate your masculinity to other dudes. It's a lot of graveyards filled. It's a lot of prisons filled because of that. I've never felt the need to validate. Well, not say never, but as I got older, you know, start coming into my teens, I didn't need to validate myself for any reason. I don't today. I don't need to validate myself. For what? To impress who? Person? I'm trying to be a good servant. Man, stay away from all that shenanigans. I'm confident with what I do, who I am. I'm not intimidated. I ain't intimidated by one who has wealth, or one who is on the street now, on his last leg. I'm just not that guy. I'm not going to become that guy because I got to validate. Crazy. Ain't nobody out there like me. There's no competition. I always told the guys at work when I was coming in, like, yo, don't let the shirt and tie fool you. Don't do that. Don't let the shirt and tie fool you. But everybody has the potential to be. Yeah. What you think they're not. Understand? Listen. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to have the music, the audio stuff hooked up by next week, so we can have some music back up and running. And maybe I even do some live performances of some of my releases. But make sure you check me out, man. You know, Sabir Alim. If you Google my name, it'll take you to the Daddy's Right Here educational station on YouTube. It'll take you to my music, which is available on all your favorite streaming platforms. My book, grab hold of my book, Code Black. Code Black is $5, available on Amazon. It was a book that I published in 2013. Everything that's in that book is happening today. I told y'all. The book is a guide. It's not just, you know, a made up book. Book is about research. It took research, not just some bright idea to put this book together. Yeah. And it's all prevalent and relevant today. But listen, I thank y'all. Y'all can be doing anything else on a Sunday morning from 10 to 12 o'clock. It's usually 10 to 11:30. Got started a tad bit late. Yeah, I kind of, you know, when you're retired, man, like the days you just don't really focus on. I've been a day behind because my wife is typically off on Friday and Saturday. This past week, she was off Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I've been like a day behind. I'm thinking it's Saturday today, even though she's at work. Like, So yeah, so I was off. I'm sitting here working on the Alim for You transformation aspects of the website. I was, oh man. So, but y'all could be doing anything else, man. But here you are, listening to me. And I appreciate it. I really do. I appreciate it. Hey, I also appreciate a like and a follow. Yeah, a like and a follow. You know, I'm not like driven by likes and follows. It really, you know, it doesn't matter in that capacity. Because I know if I reach one, that one takes it to someone else. You know, that whole theory. But when it comes down to accessing certain certain functionality of these very platforms, because I'm on StreamYard, so I'm streaming to the Facebook station, but I'm also on TikTok via my phone. At some point, I'll be switching over to be able to access all of my social media right from StreamYard, because different plans allow you to access. So I'll be doing that momentarily and just finalizing some things, because I'll be doing a weekly flash sale from here to with my Aline For You site. So I'm getting ready to run the flash sale next week. Be the first flash sale. So make sure you go to the site, look at the prices. You're talking about something that may be going for $60 right now, that may be going for $40. Yeah. Price drop, but you can only get it while I'm live. Once that live session ends, the sale is over. The sale is over. So I'm just telling you now. They're upcoming next week. I'm going to start. So I want to start going to all of my social media platforms at the same time, running flash sales. The Elaine for the Daddy's Right Here stuff. I should have all of that posted up this week on the site, AleneForYou.net site. So you'll be able to access that as well. Gods in a Man's World. That was my last album release that came out earlier this year. Make sure you jump on that. I just released another single, Erase, which is a remix of the song that was released in 2022. So this is a remix of that. Make sure you check that out. What else? Hey, listen, have a great day. Thank you once again for tuning in. TikTok, you guys are amazing. It's like I at a minimum, I think it's like 50, 80 people. I appreciate it. If it was 5 people on, I'd still be doing this show like it was a room full of people, right? Because this is what I do. This is what I have to offer. Hey, listen, pass it on. If you ever miss this show, just go on to YouTube, to the Daddy's Right Here educational station, and see the video again. Peace.